Hey everybody, my name is Brendan Noble and I'm a young adult author. Welcome back to my Slavic Saturday series where we talk about Slavic mythology and folklore, especially related to my Slavic fantasy series and the first book in the series, A Dagger in the Winds. Um, this week on the series, we're talking about a creature, a swamp demon specifically called the Devozana or the Boginka, depending on which region you're in. And like a lot of other demons we've talked about, this one likes to inhabit the woods, the swamps, and especially these areas at night. But before I jump back into the Devozana, I just wanted to mention that that first book in the series, A Dagger in the Winds, I'm still looking for advanced readers as well as beta readers for it. I have links down in the comments below if you would like to apply to either of those. And I also have a link down below if you'd like to join my newsletter where you'll get early insights into some of the things related to the series. So, to the early Slavs, forest and nature was always around them, whether it was around their farms, around their villages, even on mountaintops. Everywhere they looked, they saw the woods and swamps within the woods, and this led to a lot of different stories and things that they would see in the shadows of the trees and in beyond tree lines and when they were exploring. And among these spirits that people saw, they are tended to not be friendly. There's not many friendly spirits in Slavic folklore, mythology, and most of them end up being demons, and Devozana is one of the unfriendly demons. So the Devozana was often considered connected to the infamous Rusalka, but was slightly different. Unlike the Rusalka, which tended to be a woman who died often from suicide or being thrown into a river, the Devozana has different connections, but also with women's role and how they died. They often were either a girl who died in childhood, a woman who killed her baby, odd connection there, but also any woman who died during pregnancy or a woman who died having a kid out of wedlock. So these were often kind of considered, most ways in demons in general were often meant to represent the ways in which people could die unnaturally or they lived unnatural lives. So these were meant to be warnings of ways that people would be punished for going against the ways of early Slavic culture. So though depictions kind of vary for the Devozana, her description tends to be that she's an old hag with breasts so large that she can clean her clothes with them. It's kind of an odd description, but is consistent across the sources I could find. She tends to linger among the trees and swamps, particularly during either midnight hours or during foul weather, which would probably be when people would not start seeing things in the woods because dark shadows are moving. But unlike a lot of creatures in Slavic myth, Dziwożona was not considered to attack directly. The Boginka, which was the other connected one in another region, sometimes would, but these creatures are very similar. But the Dziwożona specifically did not attack directly. It tended to lurk in these shadows and watch mothers with their children. And what they would do is their job, what their goal was to steal babies and replace them with their changelings. Changelings are kind of a common thing in Slavic mythology. They were meant to represent disabled children. It was kind of an easier explanation for the early Slavs to say that their baby had been replaced by a changeling than it was to say that their baby had a disability, which is kind of brutal, but was just how things were interpreted at the time. So Devozana would take the baby, and unlike again other demons where they're much more cruel or dim-witted often, this is a very smart demon. She would lure away the mother and then steal the baby. And the baby and the changeling often looked very similar until it started growing up and grew a large abdomen, often a small head, and had these kind of disabilities. They usually died during their childhood, but if they grew up, they claimed they tended to be much less social. They tended to be isolated and would walk around murmuring to themselves. There are some ways to protect your child from the Devozana, though, in some ways were thought to be that if you tied a red ribbon around the baby's hand, which is actually still a tradition, especially in some Slavic countries, and then as well as having the baby wear a red cap specifically at night to protect its face from the moon, because the moon in Slavic myth was often meant to cause people to become demons if they were born during the wrong moon or they saw a moon too early. There's a lot of different stories related to that. And lastly, the kind of not completely connected to Devozana, but just linguistically, Devozana's name is very similar to Dziwożona, which is the goddess of the wilds and the hunt. And I don't think this is an accident. In some regions, specifically Slovakia, her name actually means wild woman, which would very much equate to potentially Dziwożona, which is kind of interesting because Dziwożona is often considered a more positive goddess, while Dziwożona is a negative demon. But it's interesting to see these connections between feminine figures and how they relate to often swamps and the woodlands, and how their different stories can relate to people's events in their life or events in their death. And that's all I have for you today on the Slavic Saturday series. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe down below. I come out with these videos every week. And if you also have any ideas of things you would like me to talk about on this series, go ahead and reach out to me. I'm always looking for more ideas. There are a ton of things in Slavic mythology that I have to talk about, but if you have ones that you would love to hear, I'd love to talk about them. But until then, I look forward to seeing you guys next Saturday.